Prime Minister Rishi Sunak has landed in Israel ahead of talks aimed at quelling the high tension in the region. In the next few hours, he's set to meet Benjamin Netanyahu.
Well, joining us now is the Deputy Mayor of Jerusalem, Fleur Hassan-Nahoum. Is the British Prime Minister visiting, is that going to be an important step for the people of Israel?
Absolutely, very important. Just after President Biden yesterday to have the UK come out so unequivocally in support of Israel and against the barbaric terrorism of Hamas is important for us morally, it's important for us strategically, it's important for us diplomatically. We're very grateful for the words of Prime Minister Sunak.
Fleur, welcome back to Talk Today. Good to have you on, and you understand certainly how important. I know this is important for you, this country's support and America's support. You're the Deputy Mayor of Jerusalem. Let's just take it to there, first of all, because I'm really keen to get the human side of this, these atrocities. How are the people of Jerusalem? What is it like to be there on a daily basis? What is the feeling amongst your people?
So let me tell you what's really incredible. It turns out, ironically, that Jerusalem is now one of the safest cities in the country at the moment because there's no rocket barrages being thrown our way. And so what we're doing is actually bringing in the evacuees from the war zone in the south and also in the north of the country. 2 days ago, the army said, we're afraid of Hezbollah rocket fire, so move. So, you know, people talk about the displacement of Gazans, and we feel for them too, but there's hundreds and thousands of Israelis being displaced from the war zone, and we are now trying to find them temporary resettlement in Jerusalem. So we're working very, very strongly in civil society. You know, the beauty of Israel is that our civil society is so strong. So in Jerusalem at the moment, there are still people in shock and trauma, but people have gone into action to resettle temporarily the evacuees, to make sure that babies have nappies and milk formula and clothing. I have an apartment that belonged to my mother, may she rest in peace, which was empty. I brought in a family also myself. They came with nothing. They didn't even have towels. They ran away from their homes. And so we're very busy. We try not to stop for a second because there's so much to do. And the main thing to do is to bring in the evacuees, to get them also psychosocial support, to get a roof over their heads, and to try and get through this war and then start healing.
What an incredible job you're doing as well, Fleur. I'm interested on your take on this. Following the blast at the hospital a couple of days ago, there's been an awful lot of misinformation spreading, not just online on social media, but in respected media news outlets as well. I'm interested to know, has that caused any tension within communities in Israel? Has it caused any doubts from people as to the behaviour of their government, what's true, what's false, and who's to blame for such an attack?
So first of all, the evidence is clear, and I think President Biden would not have said it so unequivocally yesterday if he hadn't seen the evidence right in front of his face. I don't think he would have done something like that. Look, you have to understand that Hamas and Islamic Jihad have thrown tens of thousands of rockets over the last 15 years to Israel. 25% of them end up landing in Gaza. So it's not far-fetched to think that, in fact, I mean, we have video evidence as well. We have, audio evidence that it was a rocket that they meant to send to the north of Israel and ended up landing on their own hospital. This happens a lot. They've killed many of their own people in the same way. So the minute I heard that Israel had so-called bombed a hospital, I, in my heart of hearts, knew that that couldn't be true. A, because we're pretty accurate, and B, because we don't target hospitals with civilians and sick people in it. That's not who we are, and that's not what we do. So it took 2 hours, because these things have to be verified, and then the army came back after 2 hours to say that it hadn't been Israel. They proved it hadn't been Israel, but in those 2 hours, you know, like Winston Churchill, my favorite quote is, a lie gets halfway around the world whilst the truth hasn't had its chance to get its trousers on. Yep. And that's exactly what happened. The lie went around the world, and this is not just bad in terms of Israel's standing in the world or PR, it's dangerous for Jewish communities around the world. My friends in the diaspora are feeling very scared and very threatened. And, you know, the press has an obligation to not take the Hamas press release. For God's sake, this is a terrorist group. You report what they tell you when you know they're lying, when they're saying that they didn't kill civilians, or we have the pictures of beheaded babies. Really? This is your source? For God's sake, there's a responsibility here that the press have to take upon itself.
Fleur, I couldn't agree more, and we've talked on this show this morning, and in fact for the last week, about disinformation and social media and what is right and what is wrong. The one thing that always shines through, and I mean this, we've spoken to you before, we've spoken to many people, and we're trying to do it in as balanced a way as possible. You said it in your speech there, the Jewish Deputy Mayor of Jerusalem, we feel very strongly for those people too in Gaza. You will understand, of course, there is no doubt that the depravity of what they got it wrong, Hamas did last weekend, needs dealing with. There is no doubt that if Israeli hostages are taken, you have a right under international law to get them back. And I think Biden's shown that, I think Sunak has shown that, and I think the world will understand that. But you would also acknowledge, absolutely, as a proud Jewish woman, that the ensuing disaster, and I was delighted to hear that the border had opened up by Egypt last night, because that is important. There's a humanitarian crisis about to happen, and the rest of the world now is watching very closely. For me, the leaders arriving, I suspect there's a lot of diplomacy going on behind the scenes. For you and the people of Jerusalem, is war inevitable?
We are at war. They attacked us. War started. This is war. When you have rockets, I mean, as British, you know this because of the Second World War. When rockets are landing, when you're running with your children into shelters, when the barrage is nonstop, you're at war. When they come in and attack your, civilians and behead babies and burn people alive and kill grandmas in their beds, you are at war. But there's a difference. There's a difference between war and war crimes.
Yeah.
Going and killing grandmothers and raping women and decapitating babies are war crimes. War is where we're in, and war is ugly. And we feel for those innocent people in Gaza, because they have been taken hostage for 15 years by their own government. We feel for those people, but the only way to save them, and of course us, is to help them change that genocidal government that kills its own people.
Fleur, can I just jump in? Nick's got some breaking news.
We have had some breaking and very, very sad news. Unfortunately, the Israeli Minister of Foreign Affairs has announced that 2 of the hostages taken captive by Hamas on the 7th of October have been found dead. Carmela Dan, 80 years old, and her 12-year-old granddaughter, Noya Dan, they were taken prisoner in kibbutz near Oz. Israel did not say where the bodies were found, but they have tweeted this morning saying, "We are devastated to announce that Noya and her grandmother Carmela's bodies were discovered yesterday. Thank you to all of you who shared her story to help us bring her home. Our hearts are broken."
Can I just say something about Noya?
Yeah.
Noya is a 13-year-old autistic child who was a champion of judo in the Special Olympics.
It's just, I think...
She's an autistic girl. That's who they kill. That's a war crime.
It's difficult to deal with this sort of situation, and you are doing this on a daily basis, Fleur, and I understand entirely your passionate defence of your position, and I think the world looks on and agrees. And I want to thank you for coming on Talk today. Our thoughts are with, of course, Carmela and Noya's family, the Dans, and other families who have lost people in, and you're absolutely right, a needless genocidal attack by a terrorist organisation that, hopefully with minimal loss of life, sorry if people don't like this, needs exterminating from this world. Thank you so much indeed, Fleur
Hassan-Nahoum.
Hassan-Nahoum.
Thank you for joining us this morning.